Hello and welcome back to the channel. And in this episode of creating our library, we will continue our work on API. And I think we will handle the most crucial part of the API, meaning the security. Okay, so we have to provide our users the way to register, log in, and log out. And also we have to somehow secure some of the routes so only the authorized user can access these. So let's start off by creating a new branch. This is going to be part 3 authorization. Auth is good because it's both for authorization and authentication. Okay, so before we start, there's one change I would like to perform, and this is in our configuration of a database, right? So here we have specified some values that we expect to have in the environment variables here. But it would be actually good to validate that because this should be environment specific. And when someone is trying to run your API on a different server, or maybe someone got your code from somewhere, we should make sure that all the environmental variables that we need to run the code are in place. And we can do that rather easy. We need to install one package, and this is happy joy and types. I can't remember how to specify that. Okay, types happy __ joy. Okay, and if you don't know, joy library is a simple library that lets you validate stuff like objects, strings, and set specific requirements for them. So for example, here if you have a schema that you'd like to validate, you can tell that this is an object and it requires username to exist, to be a string, to be alphanumeric, set the length, match the pattern, reference another field, anything that you'd like. And we will use that to verify our configuration. So let's start with that. You can okay. You can specify it as a schema to validate in for root. So here it should be validation schema, and it matches the joy pattern without a problem. So we'll import joy from happy joy. Okay, so our config module is built so that it works with joy out of the box. So that's good. Now let's specify the keys that we need. This is of course the Postgres host, and this should be a string to be required. It should be Postgres port. This is a number and it is required. It should be Postgres user, again, string and required. Then the Postgres password, string required, and Postgres DB also string required. Right, let's see what else we have in the end. There's a port. Okay. So let's, oh, we have that. So there's a host port. Let's add this to user dictionary. Okay. Yeah, that looks fine. And we will perform our authorization using JSON Web Tokens and passports, passport.js library, because reading through documentation, let me see. Yeah, using passport is actually what the founders of NestJS recommend. So I guess we'll go with that. So just to show you how this validation works, I will need two values, JSON Web Token secret and JSON Web Token expiration time. Okay, and now, as you can see, this works as expected because we're getting an error because the JSON Web Token secret and JSON Web Token expiration time aren't defined. Okay, so let's define that. Expiration time is going to be 1 hour because the value is in seconds. And then to get the secret, let's see, generate secured hash. We'll just get some kind of hash, any kind of hash should work. Or basically can be any string really, but this looks more professional, of course. Okay, after we have that, we will restart our application. And now it should go through the compilation without any errors. Or do we? Your WT is required. Is there a set thread? Of course, when in doubt, there's a typo. Okay, so we have our environmental variables validated with joy. That's good. The next step is actually to work on the authorization model. So we'll use the code generation, a nest generate module, Auth. It's one thing that we need. Then we need a service. I believe. And we need controller. Right, looking good. So, first things first, let's go to the controller. Oh, this is spec. Let's update the generated code. First thing, that we'd like to do is give our user ability to register. This is rather obvious, right? So let's try that. This should be post with register endpoint. This is simple function, and we will read two values from the body, and this is going to be an email, which should be email of type string, and there should be also password, which should be password of type string. Okay, and we'll use the Auth service to register with the email and the password, like that. Now we need to inject our Auth service here. So let's grab a constructor, and this should be private read-only Auth service of Auth service. The question is, oh, an empty constructor. Is it injected for us? It looks like it. Okay, so now we close that. This is formatted perfectly on save, and now we have to go to the Auth service and create the registration method. So what should be the process of registration? It's async register should be I register. We create interface here below the class, and this is password string and the email of string. And now few things here. Well, definitely one of the things we should do is to validate the password, but we can handle the validation in the next episode. So add validation, validate the email. We can do that later. But first thing that we have to do is to take the user password and hash it, because you should never store the passwords in plain text in your database. You should always secure them somehow. And we will use a bcrypt library. So the one here. So let's see, that should be good enough. And also types for bcrypt. And then it should only take a minute or a second. Yeah, we need password here and we need email here. Okay, this is installed. So now we can import all as bcrypt from bcrypt. And then let's see, we'll try catch it just in case. Well, there will be a case we need to handle for sure. So hashed password is await bcrypt hash. This returns a promise, so this is this has to be asynchronous. Data is of course our password, and then we specify the rounds, and this is the salt. Yeah, you can give a string here as a salt, or you can pass a number, both are fine. And the salt, well, the old joke is like when you're cooking fish, you need to add a little bit of salt to make it tasty. The same to make the hash password really secure, you should add some kind of secure string or number to it. In our case, the number 12 should be enough. And this should be our hashed password, right? So then what's left for us is to create the user. So the user should be created with oh, we need the user should be of course created by the user service, right? So we need to extend that so that we're able to create a user here. So let's create the user. And actually we can help ourselves a little bit. What we can create here is user create DTO-TS, and DTO stands for data transfer object, and this is basically the set of the properties that client will send to us. We will create this as a class, user DTO, email is a string and password is a string. Okay, that's gonna be better. And it actually makes sense to use a class instead of interface here. And the reason is that interfaces are invisible after the TypeScript validation, meaning they have no meaning for pure JavaScript, right? While class definition will be available and understandable by JS engine. So with that, we can change this a little bit. This should be create user DTO and types should match still, right? And then user service can create just create function, I believe. Yeah, create. This should be user data, create user DTO, and new user is gonna be created by our repository. Create with user data. That's good. Well, after you create the user, you have to save it to repository, because now it's only like pending, like ready to be saved, because maybe you have to do some additional validation or change something after you create it. Only after calling the save on your repository, the data itself will be actually saved to database. So let's add that. Then we can return new user. Okay, so this brings us back here, and now user will be yeah, we don't have user service here, but we should be able to inject it. Let's create a constructor with private read only user service type user service. Okay, an empty constructor. Try catch, yeah, this user service create, and here we will pass email, and password's gonna be hashed password. Okay, and now we have interesting problem because we can resolve dependencies of Auth service. So this brings us back to dependency injection. As I told you last time, the dependencies of your modules and their classes are resolved automatically by NestJS using dependency injection. But sometimes you can encounter a problem with it and see that given service or controller is not able to resolve its dependencies. So let's figure out why. The Nest can resolve dependencies of Auth service, and this is being user service. So let's see how these are actually resolved. There is Auth service and Auth controller. Okay, so I believe what is missing here, or maybe I'm wrong, is the users module, because we are using the Auth service from the users module. Does that help? Well, not really, but let's check our users module. So it imports some stuff, and we'd like to use that module in Auth module, and precisely would like to use the user service. But you can treat modules a little bit as you use ES6 modules, meaning they have both imports and exports naturally. And here we are missing exports. So if we add user service as export here, suddenly it all works. So what is happening here? We know that some separate module, Auth module, will need user service to work, right? And user service is a part of user module. Therefore, we can tell that the Auth module should import user module, and from there use the exported user service, because importing the module is not enough. You have to additionally specify what parts of given module should be exported for NestJS to build its dependency tree. Okay, we have that sorted out, and it is looking good, I think. So let's see whether we can register an user. And I will be using a Thunder client, and I will click create new request. I will specify the URL. This is Auth register. This is post method, and I can put some JSON content here, and it should be email set to, let's say, test.com, and then there's a password set to test 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and let's see what happens. Okay, 201 created. Well, that's fine, I guess, but one thing we might change, actually, well, no, that's good. Created is fine. User was created. And if I take a look, on my users table right here, come on. I can see my user and test password. Is this correct? Shouldn't it be hashed? Let me check that. This is Bream DB. And the password doesn't look so good. And this is because let's see. Let's try this again. You can create it. Sir, excuse me. Clear query, no, not that. I would like to remove that row. Come on. Delete. Save that change. Okay. Now let's run this again. Oh, now it's fine. Now it's hashed. Okay, so in that case, we can simply return the user, and then our Auth controller can return it. That's fine. Should we handle some special cases here? And I'm gonna say yes. And one special case is, well, let's start with the fact that we shouldn't send the password back. So we'll clear that. I know that this is kind of simple, easy approach for clearing stuff, but it's fine for now. Let's see where we get any errors. And I'm gonna say yes. So we already created the user with given email. And if you take a look at the user entity, I said that the email should be unique. So what actually happens if I do that? Okay, I get duplicate key violates unique constraint, query failed error. And this means that there's an error when I'm trying to add a user with email that's already taken. So we have to handle that case. This is rather easy, but we need to add something rather specific here. And this is, we're add here file called Postgres error codes. Yes. And in here, I will just specify an enum Postgres error code. And this is going to be set to unique violation. This is 23505, right? And this is a string, not a number. It's interesting. So then I can check if error exists and has a code? And is it Postgres error code unique violation? And if so, I can throw new exception, HTTP exception. That should be with information that the email is taken, and status should be HTTP status bad request. Okay. If case of any other error, we'll for now throw new HTTP exception with info about something went wrong. HTTP status internal server error. And now let's try registering again. Okay, that's Postgres error code is not defined. Oh, of course. Yeah. Try this now. Okay, email token. It's a typo. Email taken. And that obviously should work too. So this is the registration part, and it already took us half an hour to implement that. I believe this is the good moment to end this, and we will handle the login in the next episode. So I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.